I've never listened to Joe Rogan, and I don't even know exactly who he is. I know he has something to do with MMA, which I don't watch. But I looked in his podcast. He gets millions. And it's just apparently just somebody talking for 3 hours, which I could not do that. I could not listen to somebody talk for 3 hours. You know, having said that, 30 million views in a day, I hereby formally invite Donald Trump to talk F1 here on Hard Compound, everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. Having taken care of that business, are you ready to go, son?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One. Race 20, Mexico. What a race. What a day for Ferrari. Carlos Sainz with the win. Charles Leclerc, P3. We now have 6 drivers with multiple wins this year, Patrick. That's only happened once before in all of F1. And we have a real fight for the constructors, a real fight still for the drivers' championship. This is just such a good season. Now, as for me, it's Mexico. I went all in on Sergio Perez, and that proved unwise. So, son, let me get your thoughts on Mexico Grand Prix.
Yeah, another disappointing showing for Perez at his home Grand Prix. That's 2 in a row, and frankly, a season to forget for him. His teammate, Max Verstappen, despite the stewards, choosing to hand Norris some extra points this weekend, Verstappen's going to win this driver's championship this season.
I think Lando's still in it,
It's
Patrick.
well in hand. Lando's not even
4
close.
weeks, 47 points.
Lando's not even close. You can just see it on track. Regardless of how good McLaren has been, and obviously leading the Constructors' Championship, they've been very good. Lando has been a very solid driver. He finally got over that hump, got a win, got multiple wins this season. He does not have what it takes to beat Max Verstappen. And I think that was very evident last week. It's again very evident this week in Mexico. It was a great race, great season, like you mentioned. So many different drivers have been able to win, and 3 constructors all still in the mix to win that championship. But when you look at it, when you look at who the drivers are that can win the driver championship, I think there's currently 3 that have, a shot. And frankly, I think Leclerc is more suited to win the championship than Lando is. Max won't let him pass on track. Max does everything he can. There's no way Lando will beat me on track. It's simply not going to happen. And Lando does not have that mentality. He's saying, "Mommy, please help me. I need your help. Punish him." And that's what's happening. And it's simply that kind of mentality will not win. It will not.
So I am not as negative on Lando as I think you are right now. But I will say we do need some consistency from the stewards. I don't think they were making up for last week. I think they pretty much got the penalties on Max correct this week. But it seems to vary a bit. And I know stewards change race to race, so it's not going to be perfect. But we definitely need to see what's happening. I am with you though on Max's mentality versus Lando's mentality. I'm quite aware of popular TV shows that I never watch and never will watch, and there's one called The Ozarks, and there's this meme, and it's a young woman saying something like, if you want to beat me, you're going to have to kill me. And that's basically how Max is driving. He's going to run you off the track if that's what it takes, and he's not going to stop unless the stewards stop him or he's in a crash. And that is, to his credit, that has paid off. So unless the stewards do something, he sort of mocked the British media by saying, "Oh, they're coming after me because I have the wrong passport," something like that. And he's correct. The F1 media, like it or not, is very disproportionately British influenced, and they are biased. But Max was quite clear. He's like, "Hey, I go to the letter of the law. I'm not breaking the rules." And so I think if he does break the rules, they'll have to start imposing some real punishments because you can't have that. That being said, I think directionally you're correct in that Lando, it's like, look, there's a certain mentality it's going to take to win. And it's literally all or nothing. And Max has that and Lando does not.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point with the stewards, they have consistently been inconsistent in their application of the rules from race to race, during a race weekend, even within the race. It's really not been clear what the actual rules seem to be. They're written. It just seems like actually applying those is challenging for whatever reason. And I actually think last week they got it wrong in the US. I firmly believe Max should have been penalized instead of Lando last week. They got it wrong. This week, again, they got it wrong. Max, at least in the first instance, his first penalty of the day, Max was ahead at the apex, took the apex, stayed on track. Lando went off. There's no problem there. I don't know why he got a penalty for that. It's insane to me. Second one, a little dangerous, but frankly, that's exactly the same thing that happened last week. And Lando got a penalty for that. So I'm confused on what the fucking rules are. So that needs to change. And I actually heard Gunther Steiner, former Haas boss, team principal, whatever you want to call him, was talking about that this week. And he said basically every single motorsport has permanent stewards. They don't change from week to week. Or at the very least, there are permanent stewards and there are a couple that rotate. And why is that not the case in F1? It's an antiquated thing. There's no reason for them to constantly be rotating. There needs to be some consistency because every single weekend, it seems like people get up in arms because something happened that has happened before and the same rules don't apply. And that's a problem, right? We don't want that. We want to make sure that we're seeing hard but fair racing. And Max just goes and goes and he says, you're not going to pass me on track, or I'm going to do everything in my power to not let you pass on track. If one week they say, okay, that's fine, how is he going to know the next week that it's not okay? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I think given the leniency that he got last week, he did it again this week and got a completely different result. And so, yeah, I think that's a problem. And that should be resolved in F1 before next season.
Now, before we talk about the race winner, Carlos Sainz, I think that's the second one this year. It's the Mexico Grand Prix. It's Checo's home race. As you said, that's 2 years in a row. Very poor result. I don't know. We've been assuming for over a year Red Bull were going to replace him. It almost seems like, look, we don't want to announce your replacement before the Mexico Grand Prix. And given the battle for the constructors, we probably don't want to take the chance, even though I'm not sure anymore there's much downside, of replacing you before the end of the season. But it does seem like he can't stay there. I compared Red Bull to a den of wolves, and Checo has survived, but you just will not survive. If you're not a wolf, you're just not going to survive there. Gasly couldn't, Kvyat couldn't, Ricciardo couldn't, Albon. It's a den of wolves. And I mean, it seems that they have to replace him at least by the end of the year, don't you think?
Well, yeah. He should have been replaced before the start of this season. It was very clear that he could not keep pace, not only with his teammate, but with every single other fucking driver on the grid. Why should you have a seat if at the very worst, the third best car on the grid, you're consistently outside of the points. That is shameful. He's had maybe 3 podiums this season.
Yeah.
Max has had, 7, 8 wins? I mean, what is he doing? They're 54 points back of first place in the Constructor Championship. Red Bull is. If Perez has even remotely an okay season, they're winning the Constructor title.
Right.
That is tens of millions of dollars in Red Bull's pockets.
Yeah.
That Perez is basically taking out of their pockets and throwing away, burning. So they need to fire him. He needs to be gone.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but I do take exception to the level because I'm starting to wonder. I mean, this is a season for the ages for Max. He likely, I still think Lando's in it. I mean, there could be a disqualification, a crash, something. He's likely to win his 4th Drivers' Championship this year. Over the course of this season, 20 races in, they might not even have the 3rd best car. Mercedes is a distant 4th in the constructors, but they might actually have the 3rd best car. I mean, what Lando is... okay, I know. you say no, but I mean...
a terrible face for anybody that's actually listening to this.
Right. But I mean, there's a sort of... I think I mentioned this a few episodes back. For all the data, for all the expertise in F1, these rules seem to have cast a spell. There's some sort of aerodynamics voodoo that Adrian Newey, that the best minds, that all the newest, wind tunnels cannot figure out. And that seems to be plaguing consistently Mercedes more than anyone else, where they're like, we have the best car. And it's just, oh, it's a little hot this week. It's a little cold this week. Oh, this track turned here. This one up here. There's always a little something. So maybe I'm being a little bit extreme, but I mean, I would say over the course so far of this season of 20 races, Red Bull is only the 3rd best car. And I think I could make the case that it's the 4th best car. But I mean, I meant to make a great case. But so I do think it's been tough on Perez, and I do think he needs to go. But I just also think this shows the greatness of Max Verstappen, because that car, I mean, he probably will win, although it's going to be a tough fight. But damn. Now, Ferrari's been on a roll. Carlos Sainz wins it. Charles comes in 3rd. They've now, as we predicted, this week will take over 2nd in the constructors. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. That is pretty good. Also, look, I'm not disagreeing with you about how good Max is. I'm just going to jump back to this really quick. But I will say Sergio Perez is closer in total points to Logan Sargent than he is to Max Verstappen. Ooh. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing.
I did not look at that. So Max has 362. Lando's at 315, if I have the latest numbers.
Yeah.
Charles at 291. Sergio Perez in 8th at 150 points. Wow. So that's over 200. Wow. That is...
It's not good.
That is not good. That is not good.
All yes. Right. Oh. Anyways. Okay. Anyways, to the Ferraris. Carlos, great weekend. He was asked and has been consistently asked this weekend and this whole season pretty much, how he felt about leaving Ferrari. And, he was pretty honest this weekend in saying, I feel like I have basically helped build this team into a championship contender. And then to be cast aside, only have 5 races and now only 4 races, I think, left with this team is pretty sad, like disappointing. It's not a good feeling. And, he pretty much has put a statement on that. Wrap this season up in a nice little bow for himself and say, you know what? You're going to miss me next year. This was not a good move for you. And I think, he wasn't going to give that up to his teammate. He wasn't going to give it up to Max, even after, a bit of a poor start. But he just took it all the way, had no issues. I mean, what a good driver Williams is getting, I guess. You have to imagine Well, I guess you have to hope that they actually put out a decent car next season because Carlos Sainz and frankly Alex Albon deserve it.
Yeah. Well, they haven't put out a decent car in, it seems like, forever. So I'm not holding out hope, even though they've been getting some additional money. So we'll see. It's just a long development runway for these teams that are in the back. But I agree, Carlos Sainz. I mean, yeah, he's helped build Ferrari, put them back into contention. I think Ferrari actually will win the constructors. I mean, right now, McLaren has 566 points. There's 4 races and one sprint left? I don't remember. 566. Ferrari is second with 537. Red Bull 512. So that's still anybody's to win. And Oscar Piastri, who's been so good this year, this long season, and these cars are starting to wear on him. Lando's put some distance between himself and Oscar. I mean, I'm not sure I blame Ferrari. I do think F1 Ferrari has made a mistake. I think you can make the case that Lewis Hamilton is the greatest ever. You can also make the case that Tom Brady's the greatest ever, but he's not the greatest right now, And so they're going to bring in Lewis Hamilton with all of his demands. He's quite the diva. I mean, hey, 7-time world champion in F1. He's there to sell a lot of Ferrari. This could turn out to be a big mistake for Ferrari. We'll see. I mean, I think Ferrari, the company that sells cars to rich people, will benefit from bringing in Lewis Hamilton. But an F1 team, like you said, they're pushing it. They could win the constructors. I think they will, because with Oscar faltering, with Lando, kind of losing his nerve a bit, Charles and Carlos there in that Ferrari. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I mean, you take these last 2 weekends in the United States and in Mexico, and Ferrari was 1-2 in the US, 1-3 in Mexico. I mean, these are very good results. You have Max and Lando getting into scraps, and basically the Ferraris picking up the pieces. They currently look faster than anybody else. I mean, they may have just hung around and then saved the best for last. We have 2 sprints, I think, left, Brazil and Qatar.
Yep, you're right.
And 4 races. So that's still a lot of points up for grabs. They are 29 points back, as you said, of McLaren. I mean, that's only a few points per race. Less than 10 points per race. Less than 9 points per race. Math is hard right now. But yeah, they absolutely can do it if Leclerc and Sainz keep kind of working together in tandem. Ferrari keeps bringing a good car out. Verstappen and Norris keep battling each other. That really opens the door, and they absolutely could come in and win the constructors. I was thinking, oh man, what a disappointment for Ferrari. They finally get over the Red Bull hump, get past Red Bull, and there's McLaren, sitting atop the standings. But maybe they actually do find a way to get it done and take that top step.
Yeah. Why don't you give me your top 5 for the Mexico Grand Prix?
Okay, top 5. Carlos. I mean, not much more to say there. He was pretty much the most consistent and best driver all weekend. He looked really good, and really good to see him get a second win on the season. Yeah, make 6 multiple race winners this season. That is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Max 7, but not in at least 10 races. Norris 3, Charles 3, Lewis 2, Oscar 2, Sainz 2.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I guess of the top 4 teams, that makes Perez the only one without a win, and him and Russell the only 2 without multiple wins, I guess.
Yeah. So Russell has 1 win, right?
Yeah.
But it's 4 races to go. If he gets it, then we have 7 drivers with multiple wins.
Yeah.
Damn.
Pretty amazing, pretty awesome season that we have gotten this year. Let's see. Then I have Magnussen after that. I mean, all he needed was to clear his penalty points, it seems like, and he's raring to go. I mean, another good performance from him, and Haas is starting to open up a little bit of a gap there to V-Carb, so great race from him. Then I have Lewis. I think he did a really nice job this weekend. Kind of struggled to get past George for a while, but ended up with a nice pass and a good points haul for Mercedes.
Yeah, though, I do want to give a shout out to George because I think Lewis had the upgrades and it just seemed to be a matter of time. But George held him off.
Yeah.
That was some pretty damn good driving on George's part.
George did a good job. I don't have him in my top 5 because if we're talking about the weekend, he crashed like multiple times this weekend. I'm like, look, dude, you can't keep doing this, okay? You cannot keep doing this. It costs the team a lot of money and resources, right? Like,
Right.
It's just not, you can't keep doing it.
But I go back to that whole aerodynamics voodoo, and Lewis and George both crashed last week. George again this week. And I'm wondering, because I actually don't know this, can you run out of money? What are the stop gaps in the F1 spending rules where it's like, look, you have to have a car for every race? You know, like, okay, George, if you crash out and then Lewis, let's say next week, Lewis is like, have they run out of money yet? Do they have to lay off staff for the last 3 races? I actually don't know.
Yeah, well, I imagine, that they just wouldn't field a car, right? Like, I guess I'm not entirely clear on the rules like you mentioned. But
yeah, I guess, but it just
I
seems
feel
weird.
like we've seen that before where Haas or maybe it was Williams just didn't field a car for a race. I forget exactly, but yeah, it is a weird thing to think about. Like,
Right.
yeah, you know what? You're going to sit out this one. Okay.
Right. We're out of cash. We're going to have to lay off, everybody back in Milton Keynes or wherever they are.
Yeah, I guess. So, yeah, Hamilton 3rd. Then I have Gasly. It's been a friggin' season for Alpine. I mean, what a fall from grace they have had. But Gasly, finally showing up with a point. I mean, I don't know. Solid race from him, I guess. There's really, that's been one of the worst teams all season. And for him to be able to get up there in the points is solid. And then lastly, a weird one, but I have to have Alonso in my top 5. 400th race start in his career is unreal. I think 90% of the grid was under 10 years old when he debuted in Formula One. At least 3 of the drivers in today's race were not born when he debuted in F1. I mean, the man has been in the sport for so long. You think about how many drivers have come and gone during that time. I think it just shows his mentality and his talent. And I had to have him in my top 5 for this weekend.
Nice. Yeah, I saw, because Lance Stroll's teammate was 2 years old. That's when Alonso was racing in F1. Lance Stroll, who's been around like almost a decade now, was 2 years old. It's amazing.
Yeah.
When I saw Yuki was 10 months old, and all I could think of was like how cute a baby a little 10-month-old Yuki.
Well, he hasn't
must
grown
have
much
been.
since then, right? So.
Ouch. All right, so you have Carlos Sainz, Kevin Magnussen, big surprise. Not big, but Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly with the Wolf Alpine, and Fernando Alonso. All right, switching to the salt compound. You talked about Alonso in his 400th race. That's pretty impressive. It's also impressive because we're having this great season And we're also getting to see some of the best ever drivers in F1 who've been around forever. Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, but also we're seeing these young guys, Colapinto, Liam Lawson. I just think, that's great. Now, Alonso had some Fernando Alonso luck. His 400th race,
He gets something stuck in a radiator and
did
has to
not finish.
retire. Yeah, it
Right.
sucks.
Right. But yeah, imagine Alonso at Red Bull. They had like talks. I don't think it was ever serious, but imagine him at the Red Bull or somewhere else. Also, you wonder, someone who's been around the sport for this long that seemed to have no outside interests. Like, man, that is just, you lived in a bubble your whole life. I mean, Nico Rosberg does a lot of stuff, but it's basically all F1 branding related or commentating. What we sort of assume Daniel Ricciardo might do, what we assume Lewis Hamilton will do once he retires. Kimi Räikkönen, he's got his little boy in karting, so he's sort of staying in it. It's just amazing. I also think, though, as amazing as what Alonso has done, 400 Grand Prix, that's just insane. I mean, since 2001, that's pretty impressive. I assume that record will be broken. It's sort of like Gordie Howe in hockey. I mean, he had played the most games, played for decades, but in a time when it was like, you go play hockey, you're exhausted, you get your ass beat every night. You then haul your ass to a bus in bitter cold Buffalo. So overnight you can drive to Toronto. Gordie Howe having the most games played in NHL. It's sort of like Fernando Alonso having the most races in F1. It's 20 years from now, every driver will have a sim. Every driver will have a nutritionist, a masseuse, a handler, private jets, ice baths, everything they need. But yeah, that's still quite the achievement.
Yeah, and not to mention seasons are getting longer, so there's more races each year, contributes to that somewhat as well. But yeah, it's just so fun to be able to watch him continue to compete. And then, like you mentioned, to see a lot of young talent come up as well and really show how good they can be and how exciting they can be. Colapinto and Lawson, you mentioned. Oscar Piastri is another one of those really young guys that has just been a lot of fun to watch, and they are exciting. And you hope that the two guys that are not currently signed to a seat next year hopefully are able to continue in F1.
Yeah, that would be nice. And earlier in the episode, we were talking trash about FIA and the stewards. One thing I think they get very right is requiring all the teams to have a young driver, someone who hasn't raced in F1, and they get to do some practice. Like this Friday, we saw IndyStar Pato O'Ward, which was great for McLaren. He's a great Indy driver, Mexican, was at the Mexico Grand Prix. We saw Felipe Drugovich, Behrman, who's raced this year, Schwartzman.
Antonelli was in there also.
Antonelli, yep. It's great to see these young guys. So we're getting, in addition to just great racing, we're seeing the young and the old, which I love.
Yeah, I got to say, that practice, normally I don't pay much attention to practices, but that was a lot of fun for a Friday session. I have to imagine the fans had a good time. There was a lot of chaos that happened in that session on that day. And I think a lot of that is some of these young drivers are pushing really hard to show what they have. And sometimes there's some miscommunication between them and their race engineer. They might not be as familiar with each other, but it was good. It was fun to see. It was fun to watch all those young guys. And I think you may have mentioned this before, but frankly, the sprints are fun. They can be more fun. They should make all of these young guys race in the sprints. You know what? Let's do away with getting the number one guys to drive in the sprints. Doesn't really matter too much. We'll have them do the races, but have these young guys do the sprint races and prove what they have. That would be exciting for everybody involved. It would give fans and teams a chance to see these young guys, see how much talent they have and how well they can get around the track. I don't know. I just think that would be That would be so cool to see.
That would be. I'd love to see that. Different topic. I happened to see this statistic, and it's NFL related football. And it was like they're the biggest buyer of Crustables. And Crustables, which the European mind cannot comprehend this, is basically ready-made, plastic wrapped, boxed up peanut butter and jam sandwiches. Okay. And apparently I think the NFL buys them by the thousands because these big guys, they're just wolfing them down like at halftime or a timeout or something, you know. And it made me think, I was like, you know, smoking has gone out of style, but you think like maybe during a pit stop or especially one where they're having, you know, like we're going to have a 10-second pit stop, a 20-second, you know, hold you there. They're like, hey man, can I have a sandwich? Can someone just hand me a smoke? You know, I mean, why not? And then it's funny, I was thinking this, and right as I was thinking it during the race, or maybe it was at the start of the race, Charles Leclerc was like, oh, my drink system is failing. And I'm like, it seems like somebody's drink system fails all the time. I'm like, of the most, what should be the most reliable tech of all, it's just a freaking drink system. It's you know, it's a little pouch in a straw, basically. How does this fail? You know?
That I do not know. It seems like maybe somebody needs a Camelback sponsorship. Figure out the drink system. Yeah, I don't know. Uncrustables. Weird. I don't know why people eat those. They're fucking gross.
I just make your own. For starters, it's usually grape is nasty. I think you just put some honey on there, you know. But yeah,
bad
these big
peanut
NFL
butter,
guys,
bad jam, bad
Right.
bread.
Bad bread.
Wow, that's
Right,
super
right.
great.
Right. It's like 500 calories or 300 calories of just like instant energy for these guys, you know. So they're
Yeah.
just wolfing down like 3, 4, 5 of them during halftime. So anyway, they have like truckloads of them at every NFL game, which I did not know.
Huh.
Well, his drink system may have failed, but Charles Leclerc, talk about living your best life. Dude's from Monaco, races in F1 for Ferrari. France has been letting him borrow a fighter jet, I think. I'm like, dude, this dude is living his best life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I'm like, because he's like, I saw that. And he was like, oh, yeah, it was so cool. Like, I'm so close to getting my pilot license or whatever. I'm like, this motherfucker flew a jet and doesn't have a pilot's license? Like, who the fuck would let him do that?
Right. France, that's
Yeah.
who.
Like, we don't need this. You fly it. You fly it.
Right. Funny. Yeah, I mean, he's a good-looking guy, nice head of hair. They're always cutting to his girlfriend. She's a hottie, you know. I'm like, hey, dude, all right, that's nice. Good to see. Another good-looking dude, Brad Pitt. I saw he was there filming for this big. Apple is still throwing money at Hollywood. They're making it big, and everybody in Hollywood's throwing money at F1. So that's good to see.
Yeah, that is good to see. You know, I'm not sure that Brad Pitt can really pass for an F1 driver, but we'll see how it goes. Also, I gotta say, I'm pretty sure they've been to like every single F1 race for the last 2 years. Like, I'm pretty sure they're not still filming. They're just trying to get free tickets to a fucking race. You know,
That'd be good, yeah.
Like, oh yeah,
funny.
we're still filming, guys. We're still filming. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you think everybody in, like, I'm sure it should be a great Drive to Survive season. The Netflix crew there, you know, maybe that's it. Oh, we wrapped that up, you know, weeks ago. And we just have to, just some background shots. But yeah, they want to go to every race. Across the line, that's our segment where we predict the top 5 for the next race. The next race is next week in Sao Paulo, Brazil. In Across the Line, we predict the top 5. If we get it right, that's 1 point each. If we get them in the exact right spot, like if I say Max will win and he wins, I get 3 points. After Sao Paulo, though, it's a 3-week break, another long break, and then Las Vegas. So last year in Brazil, it was Max, then Lando, then Alonso. That was fun. Alonso had that run, and it was like him and Perez, too, were doing some battles, and Perez, I think, was a little hamstrung because, he knew he couldn't crash out or anything, so he couldn't be quite as aggressive. And there was some, like Las Vegas, I think Mexico, Brazil, Alonso and Perez. That was fun to see. Anyway, Across the Line, Patrick. We're going to predict for Brazil. But what are the current standings?
Alrighty, well, after the US GP last weekend, I was ahead 17 points, 67 to your 50. This week was a good week for me. Top 5 was Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell.
Wow.
You had Perez, Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, Lawson. So you had 2 points, one for Hamilton in third, one for Russell in fourth. I predicted the podium exactly as it happened.
Damn.
Sainz,
that might be a first.
Norris, Leclerc. I think that's the first time either of us has done that. So I got 9 points for that. I had Piastri, Alonso at 4 or 5. I didn't get any points for them. So that means now I have 76 points to your 52.
Oof.
So I'm up to 24 with 4 races to go. At
so
6
you got
points.
17 points this week?
No, I got 9.
Oh, 9. So I have to get 8. I have to gain 8 on you. Oh, that's going to be, yeah. Lando has a better shot than I do. Lando has a better shot at winning the Drivers' Championship than I do winning across the line. Okay, who goes first?
You have first pick this week.
Okay, well, last year it was Max in Brazil. Max has not won, it seems, in months. But I'm going to go with Max.
Nice. I think that is not a bad choice. Max has really been proven why he has won 3 championships in a row. Norris is good. He just doesn't have what it takes to get over the hump. But maybe if Max is not in his way on track, he'll be able to do it. So I'll take Lando P1.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take Leclerc. Ferrari has been coming on strong. I think they're going to keep it going in Brazil.
Yep. After Max, I'm going to go with the hot team Ferrari. And so that is, you took Charles, so I'm going to take Carlos. I'm then going to go past Oscar Piastri because Oscar's just, this long season's wearing on him. And I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton.
That is nice because I wanted George. So I'm going to take Russell. And then I will take Oscar. I think he's got a good car, still driving okay, just had a really not a good qualifying. I think he could have been a little bit higher had he qualified better.
All right. I think Sergio has officially fallen off. I am not going to take him 4th or 5th. I will go with Liam Lawson and then Alonso.
Ooh. I am going to... Yeah, you know what? F it. I'll avoid Perez too. I'll take Hulkenberg.
Oh, that's a good one. And man, I'd love to see him on the podium. All right, you have Lando, Charles, George, Oscar, and Nico Hulkenberg for Brazil. I have Max, Carlos, Lewis, Liam, and Alonso. Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
I do have a several-part crazy prediction
Ooh.
for next season.
Right, so you built rationality, a sequence into your craziness.
I did. I think we're going to have an almost repeat of the Gasly, Albon, Red Bull saga. I think Yuki is given Perez's seat to start the season in 2025. He will be demoted back to VCARB or whatever it's called next year. 8 races into the season.
Ooh.
I think Liam Lawson will then take that seat for the remainder of the season. And he'll do acceptably, but not good enough for Red Bull. So he will be booted, gone, out of F1 at the end of the 2025 season. And Red Bull will sign Carlos Sainz to a multi-year deal for the second Red Bull seat starting in 2026.
Oh, that would be good. And then Williams could bring in Colapinto.
There you go.
Hey, nice. I don't have a crazy prediction, really. I just think, given what we've seen this year, I think we could in 2026 have a car show up that's just so utterly hyper dominant, just like maybe the Mercedes in the turbo hybrid era, the 2023 Red Bull. I don't think we're going to have that next year, though. I think no one has yet figured out this aerodynamics. I think no one has figured out the fragility of these cars and the complexity of the setups. It's like just chaos theory going there. So I guess my crazy prediction is that 2025 will be even crazier than 2024. We'll have let's say at least seven multiple race winners. We'll have 10 race winners, for example. So that's sort of my craziness. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved Father and Son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated. We hope you subscribe, and we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
You just finished listening to Hard Compound, recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and around the world.